But
oh, we would love to see you as well.
that's a good option. Probably you may not say that after seeing me.
Okay.
No issues. I can come if you want, but I don't want to occupy more space here.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for joining. A very, very special thanks to the HR team who thought about this program when we were discussing in the committee meeting. We thought these are all new learnings for us. So not just actions, even reactions. We thought we should give an opportunity to everyone, every member to learn from others what new things, the new business laws we are learning. This has become a new normal, I should say. Thanks everyone. Thanks the HR committee. I just, even the Madras Chamber is experimenting. If there are any issues, please bear with us. And I also urge every one of you to visit our website. The Chamber has been doing its best to in this critical time to help the members.
Yeah.
Can I request everyone to put your mobile phones or the thing on mute, please? Both audio, video. We are still hearing a lot of noise. Okay, sorry. So that's about it. So I request all of you to visit our website also. We have a COVID help desk, not just on this, on many other things. Any queries, we are trying to help. We have all the contacts. We have all the up-to-date circulars. We have the CSR initiatives of the members as well as people seeking. So there is a lot more happening in the website now. Please visit the Madras Chamber website. And I also should say that probably before we start, Professor Sridhar will give an overview of the idea of this session. At the end of the session, I also want your feedback and very, very grateful, probably a big thanks to all of you. It's nearly more than 90 people. I could see already 75 joining. The registration is closer to 90. So thanks a lot, and I'm sure you will find the session useful. Want more feedback from you, more suggestions from you. Have a fruitful session. Thanks a lot. I'm going on mute now.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Ms. Saraswati, for supporting us, and thanks to Secretariat for organizing this in spite of many busy schedule they have. And on behalf of the HR committee and co-chair Mr. Anand, I thank the entire team for putting this on. And once again, welcome to all the participants and also the speakers who have taken time to support us with this session in spite of their lockdown conditions. So as you have seen the schedule, we have 5 eminent people who are part of many industry bodies and with various experiences. And the reason why we thought we should have a different set of people is, for example, if you take Mr. Venkat, he is one of the senior members in the industry NHRD body and group president of RANE. Overall, they handle a huge force, and so we thought we should have a perspective across the industry, where I request Mr. Venkat will be sharing his experiences. And then we have Mr. Prashant Srivastava, who has joined us from Mumbai. And he has been the CEO, then head HR of Ambani Group, and then he is on his own now from alumni of IIM Ahmedabad, and he runs his own organization called the Other Thirds, which does a lot of engagement activity and engagement projects with corporates. So he will give us a perspective of how engagements are needed at this juncture. And then we have Mr. Subramani, who is the CEO of HR 3.0, who is a veteran in the HR field from XLRI, and he has been part of telecom to Viatech Webag, and then you take it from HCL services, and he brings a huge perspective, and incidentally is part of the Staffing Board of India, which a lot of challenges are there, and which for the last 20 days he's working with various government agencies and sharing his perspectives and supporting them, defining a lot of policy support as well. So welcome Mani once again. And then we have Mr. Shyam Sundar, who is again a veteran and from the automobile industry. And the amount of work they have done in the last 20 days, one of the significant things I would request Mr. Shyam to speak is on how they have employed engaged employees with their survey, which was quite interesting when he shared with us, and share his experiences on how employees are responding to the survey, and then what all the challenges they have seen it or experiencing it. So I would request Mr. Shyam to speak on that. And then we have a young Turk, Mr. Dinesh, who is from the IT Infosys. And from talent acquisition, he's moved on to a different role for last 2 years and doing a lot of significant work there. And Dinesh will share us with, because Infosys has a workforce of 2 lakh plus employees. Dinesh, correct me if I'm wrong. So Dinesh will come out with perspective, what are the steps they have taken at Infosys. So we have tried to rope in a panel which has varied experience, different, each person is having a different perspective, and a lot of initiatives have been done on their own individual sides. And so this is a small introduction about each speaker. The way in which we are going to conduct this panel discussion is, I request each speaker to speak for 10 minutes and give the perspectives, overall perspective, whatever the things they want to share. And then that will go for 15 minutes. And afterwards, we'll have Q&As with the speaker for 10-15 minutes. And then we'll open it for audience to ask questions. And because when audience are asking questions, be specific if you have any questions to each speaker. And then once again, just a reminder to be on mute mode when the speakers are speaking. Thanks a lot. And I request Mr. Venkat to share his overall view of the situation now.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Srivastava, for this wonderful introduction and setting the context. Am I audible to everyone? You don't have, you can just type the text yes, so that I'll know that I'm being heard. It's always this, it's good to check. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think several of you have responded. We've all been bombarded with lots of messages and lots of insights by different consulting companies and experts and different kinds of forums about the impact about COVID-19, about this pandemic, about its impact on different sectors of the economy, people, and countries, etc., etc. And we've also known clearly what's. Sorry, there is a message if participants can mute the video. So I request all the participants to please mute the video and audio as well, except when you have to ask the question much later in the program when you can switch on. Thank you, and welcome the new joinees now. So there's a lot of research work, and it's something very, very unique for all of us. I'm not sure whether I should say that we are fortunate to go through this kind of experience. Normally, people would say, hello, who's that? And yeah, so there is some message.
I think it's necessary all the participants to go on a mute video as well as audio.
Yes.
Okay.
All the participants, please. The host can mute all except the speaker. Yeah, I think the host can. Prashant says.
We can do that. We thought it may be a little rude. Okay, we will do that.
I think you can do that. Yeah, for the present, you please do that. So this is something I'm not sure if it's an adversity, and the other one is, I don't know if we are really fortunate to be going through this kind of an experience, but I think that this was coming. We should have seen the signals right. Some kind of a correction in the economy and something of this kind was coming. Only thing is we didn't know that it's going to come in a form which is as severe and as serious as this. So I think all of us would have read a lot of reports, so I'm not touching upon any of those. I would like to recall a few things that we have done from our company, from our perspective. Some points are general and some are very specific. The foremost is about people. I think what is the most important aspect at this point in time for any organization is health and safety of its people. It's extremely important that we pay a lot of attention to the health and safety of people. And in fact, 21 days back, maybe a few days prior to that, we started talking about working from home and social distancing, etc. We were completely at a loss to understand how manufacturing operations can happen working from home. There's a huge limitation in terms of more people, the possibility of more people working from home and keeping the lights on in the shop floor. These are two different things, and it's impossible that, and in a way, there is only so much that we can do working from home when it comes to the manufacturing industry, because a lot would depend on, in the automotive industry, a lot would depend on what the customer wants and what our customer wants, what the end customer wants, and therefore the OEMs, and therefore we in the company. So it's so interlinked. And we had a strong and robust IT system, but we were not prepared for, honestly, we were not prepared for kind of a very serious, heavy duty work from home kind of an arrangement, number one. But what was important for us was the health and safety of our people. And to that extent, we were in touch with all the people in the organization in different parts of the country and the world, and ensuring that we share our concerns and wishes, and making sure that what they need to do, and sharing all the best practices to be observed in terms of social distancing, staying at home, etc., government policies. And in terms of the likelihood of our restarting the operations, our preparedness for restarting the operations as soon as we are allowed to do so. That is one. And second, and the more important, is the learning bit. What is it that we could do? How can people make use of this time more meaningfully and learn something useful? So we are in a small way, we were on a digital learning platform, and this gave us a lot of time to really ramp up and scale that quickly to a very large segment of our workforce right across all the organizations. And therefore, several programs which are part of our calendar to be run during March, particularly during April and May, we have converted them and we are trying to deliver them online. In addition to that, I personally participated in several group calls, such as the one that we are doing now, to listen to the voice and concerns of the young workforce. They're all the management trainees, graduate engineers trainees who joined us last year and in the last couple of years, and hear them out, understand what goes on in their minds. It's pretty interesting to understand that maybe in the first few days, first week, it wasn't so much of a thing. People all thought that this would pass by and they would come back and things would become normal, but it wasn't so. It took a very serious turn subsequently, and when the number of cases started rising, the kind of concerns that was going in the minds of the young workforce shifted considerably, and we were very concerned, and we still remain very concerned about a lot of questions. Not that we have answers to all of those questions, but surely we are trying to find answers. We are also engaging with a lot of experts, psychologists, etc., to understand answers to some of these questions. Third aspect is keeping a check on cost in the post-COVID and conserve cash. This is something very important. Therefore, there is an organization-wide movement. There is an organization-wide discussion around this theme, which is happening right now. And people are at the center of making sure that all these actions are executed. And lastly, it's about strong, decisive leadership that's required at an organization level. There's going to be a lot of disruption to this as normal, new normal, next normal. We don't even know what is normal. Normal is sometimes abnormal, subnormal. We don't know what is normal now. But I think things will become okay. There is a next normal, and we will all reach that. That's the destination. At least an immediate destination that we will reach, the next normal. And from then on, we will charter our own course. But the ride to that place is going to be bumpy. We recognize that it's not going to be easy. I think what we are witnessing today is a kind of a global pandemic of this magnitude is something, terrible to have happened. But now that we are part of it, I think all of us together collectively contribute our bit through our organizations and individually to come out of it, and come out in a manner in which we become much stronger and handle the new normal, the challenges of a new normal business environment much better. So these are the few aspects that I have. To summarize, it's about people, put them right at the center. Their health and safety are very important. It's important that we take care of everyone. And in whichever way, there are government instructions, there are our own philosophy of people management, of people policies. Then second is about learning. Third is about cost. Fourth is about leadership. With this, I hand you over back to Professor Sridhar. Take it forward, and I'll remain connected with the audience. Come back at a later stage when there is a Q&A. Thank you, Prof.
Thanks a lot, Venkat. It's an interesting perspective to listen to you. And one of the things I would like to speak or check upon is on the cash flow perspective, which is going to determine whatever we do. But we'll have it at the later session. And we have heard from industry practitioners, but now let us go to Mr. Prashant, who was the MD and CEO of Gallup earlier, then again got into Ambani Group as the group HR head, and then now he's on his own for 2 years and consulting a lot of MSMEs to huge organizations. And the name of the organization is The Other Two-Thirds, which is very interesting to understand, and there's a good story behind why he has kept the name of the organization like that. I would request Mr. Prashant to take it forward.
Thank you, Professor Sree. And Venkat.
So a little bit more volume. We are able to hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Now it's perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Sree. And thank you, Saraswati and the Madras Chamber for organizing this and giving us opportunity to share our thoughts. And thank you, Venkat. Your perspectives was really very valuable.
Thank you.
And no, Venkat, it has always been good learning whenever I have met you and whenever I have spoken to you. And that continues to be so.
Thank you, Prashant.
Thanks, Venkat. Oh, you're welcome. Now, coming to what I wanted to share is that building on what Venkat said, there's a new normal that is being created. And we are under all-time very high emotional and financial and safety and health pressures. Of course, health and safety comes first. Having said that, somewhere the powers that be will have to figure out that how long can we live in kind of house arrest, right, which is creating emotional challenges with the people. And I will show you some data to substantiate my point, which is also bringing out some sociological challenges which are still quite deeply embedded in our society. And we hear very good noises and very good voices, but in practice, in action, perhaps we haven't internalized it. That's my second point. The third point that I want to make is that there has to be a balance between uh, safety and productivity in a country which accounts for almost 20% of world's population, and where the per capita income is very, very low. It might make huge sense for people who are part of this webinar to stay logged in. But not just this morning, my wife went to buy some grocery, and on the signal, there were these small kids trying to sell some household items, and she bought everything that she could buy, even if she needed or if she didn't need it. But these are small kids selling it, right? Now, for them, the question is whether to die with virus or whether to die of hunger. So while we are comfortably sitting at our homes, there are these people wanting and waiting to work, but they have no customers to sell. So in a very large country with very large number of people below the real poverty line, not these artificial poverty lines that have been drawn, uh, I think a debate has to start on how to stay productive, how to contribute to GDP while staying safe without compromising on safety, but still be productive. Because if you're not productive, uh, while upper class and the upper middle class and even middle class might survive, but the lower middle and the lower class is going to go through uh, a very paradoxical choice between infection and livelihood, infection and food. The supply chains are under pressure. I was talking to the chairman of an FMCG company, and what he said was that, Prashant, there is 7 days inventory because we've been against inventory and cost optimization and inventory optimization. Between the retailer and the wholesaler and the factory, total inventory is 1 month's inventory, which essentially means that 3 weeks are over, another 1 week, the inventory will start drying up. And therefore, a need to press the supply chain back in action. We shouldn't overcrowd the marketplace, but we need to get the supply chain action. So going back to, if we have to get the supply chain in action, if we have to protect people in the lower strata of the society from dying from hunger, we have to, those who can afford to work from home, have to start contributing besides working from home. Have to start our contribution to the GDP, our willingness to step further, because finally, it's one CEO that you change at the top and the organization becomes growth oriented and you lose one CEO with the same set of people, the organization starts losing money. Same thing applies to GDP. So, so now I'll just share my screen and try and show you some things which were startling for me. So we've done a work from home survey, which is have, if they don't work from workplace, we won't have power supply, we won't have medicine supply, we won't have, food supply. Am I audible? Hello?
Hi,
Sridhar?
Prashant. Money here. I think
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, okay. Okay, that's nice. That's nice. So if you look at this dashboard, 68% of people are engaged. Now, this happens because today we're grateful that we are alive. So in 2009, the engagement went through the roof. This is again going up, right? Most of the people are showing happiness with work from home index that we've developed across some 6 parameters, right? Remote external meetings is quite a challenge. Now let's see what happens if you just look at women. So if I go to gender and I look at women, 50% of women are engaged, right? As against men, which is 71%. So, and if you look at the bottommost challenge, apart from the remote external meeting, the workplace at home, workspace at home is a challenge for women, which shows that when men, women, everyone is working from home, men have the better part of the house to work from, and women are struggling for workspace. Not only that, there's no household help, children are home, there's no schools, there are no daycare centers operational, all of which is coming on women, and therefore, despite low expectations, their engagement is very, very low, which is worrying, which is quite worrying. Though overall the WFH index is high, but this low level of engagement is seriously worrying. And if you see, 6% of women are also still working from workplace. So there are women, this must be healthcare, etc. Now, the other startling finding that I would like to show you is the Gen Z. Gen Z are people born 95 or later, 1995 or later. Their engagement score is as low as 31%. Right? So that's the challenge we're facing. Now contrast this with Gen X, right? Which is showing like 100% engagement score. With Gen Y, which is showing 4% engagement score. So that's really the, sorry, this is, I'm sorry, I have to go to all and then take Gen Z. So it's a little higher. It's not as low as 31%. It's 52%. But if you take women of Gen Z, because it was working on double filter, then it goes to 31%. So somebody was asking me that, is it only the older women? Maybe, the younger women, their families, their husbands are more cooperative, etc. But if you look at Gen Z women, this can go down to 31% from 52%. So the basic sociological conditions between men and women haven't changed. Between Gen Z and Gen X is about 80% plus, if I recall right. Yeah, 80%. So Gen X is 80% and Gen Z is 51%. So there's a war between Gen X and Gen Z at workplace and at home, right? Gen Z are children of Gen X, and they're not coming to terms whether it is workplace or at home. And that is showing in the stark difference. Now, what is this doing to Gen Z, let me just take this filter out so that there's no problem. What is this showing to Gen Z is this. 13%, even in a situation where there are no jobs, 13% are eager to quit their jobs as soon as they get an opportunity, they will quit. That's what our predictive algorithms are showing in terms of attrition. Whereas overall attrition is only 6%. Negative scores of Gen Z on peacefulness are 24%. While they're passionate, they're perseverant, meaning they're giving you the discretionary effort. They're talking positive about the company, but they don't want to stay with you, and they're not peaceful. So that could lead to significant. Now I don't have algorithms, so I can't predict a number on this one, but this could lead to significant emotional health issues for Gen Z. Now, this is hard data and hard algorithms which we have built over past 2 decades, and most of them work. Most of them work. Trust me, they work. And therefore, as organizations, we've got to do something, whatever we can do for women, and we have got to certainly own up the responsibility of creating the stress in Gen Z that needs to be comprehensively released, right? And for all you know, this 13% will have a lot of your high performers who need to be actively retained. So are we listening? Are we listening enough, right? Or because we have too many things to manage, right? We are not listening enough. I mean, are there mechanisms built in your organizations to listen to people and address whatever is in your hand, whatever is a sociological challenge, whatever is a men, women roles at home challenge? That's something that we as organizations can't do much about. That's where we need a long-term intervention of a sociological change. But maybe we're doing enough. But if we're not, don't we think that it's our responsibility to do enough to make these people productive, to contribute to our businesses? Because I don't know how many of us are HR people on this call and how many are business people on this call, but most of the HR people know and understand what is coming. If the cash flows of the businesses are not maintained, we will have massive job losses. And to avoid that, listening to people, addressing their challenges, ensuring that they're productive, they're contributing to the cash flows of the businesses. And if businesses do well, people don't lose their jobs, economy will do well, and economy will perhaps, I don't know whether it will do well, but it will not do as badly as it is predicted to. So that's my short take. Sociological change required, but long term. Gen Z is at risk both of losing them and emotional health, needs help. We must help them, right? We should constantly listen to employees, ensure their productivity. They want to work. They want to work. They want to deliver, right? Release their stress. A lot of stress is perhaps coming from the fact that people are not sure of their jobs. So can we provide them with psychological safety net as defined by one of the researchers in HBR article? If we can do all of that, I think as leadership, as HR, we would have done a wonderful work. Thank you, Professor Sridhar.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. And one of the pointers I would like to highlight on this is, which we can discuss during the Q&A, is space for women workforce in house, and then Gen Z to be taken care, and where attrition is a concern, and more so on the sociological or cash flow aspects. If the basics of basic goods, when Prashant has spoken to a chairman of FMCG, then it's a serious thing. When stock out is going to happen, we should not have a mad rush at the lower level. So factories are to be up if we have to see the production happening. So these are one of the few pointers that we should remind ourselves how to handle, and we'll get more clarification when we go for a Q&A session. Thanks, Prashant ji.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Now let us hear the perspective of Dinesh, who is from Infosys, and they are a huge workforce. But unlike our friends who spoke on manufacturing aspects, we have to see how IT's team is dealing with HR concerns if they have. And more so, these organizations are catering to the industry for US and Europe and other countries, where those countries are also undergoing challenges. Let us see from Dinesh's perspective what he has to share for us. Dinesh, time for you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Sridhar. Good afternoon, everybody. It's indeed a pleasure and an honor to talk about the present situation, representing an IT industry perspective. Firstly, I think we had two great speakers, Mr. Venkat and Mr. Prashant, who gave lovely perspectives. Before I even start about Infosys or the IT industry, I just want to give you a brief perspective about the uniqueness of IT industry. One, almost 80% of our folks work out of India-based locations from an Infosys context, and we employ close to about 2.5 lakh people. And 20% of our employees work at on-site locations. When I say on-site, primarily the US, Europe, and a few other geographies as well. And this 20%, out of this 20%, at least about 10 to 15 would be a floating population, meaning they kind of come into India and then they kind of go back to other locations as well. The typical, the consultants, the sales team, the enterprise architects, and some of these IT professionals. So COVID has indeed caused a lot of concern and a lot of issues for us. To give you again a very, very brief perspective about how the entire events unfolded in front of us. We started with travel advisories starting beginning of February, because we have a good presence in China, where we have close to about 5,000 odd employees working in Shanghai, Shenzhen, and a small lot working in Beijing as well. So we kind of understood the gravity of the situation, but none of us anticipated, as Mr. Venkat pointed out, how things are going to pan out in a very, very short period. Our travel advisories broadly were divided into 3 zones. It was red, orange, and then we had one more classification, basically calling us high impact, medium, and low impact. Traveling in and out of high impact countries were a strict no-no. And at that point in time, interestingly, the high impact countries, hold your breath, were China, South Korea, Taiwan, and there was one more country, I don't remember. This was somewhere in the early and mid-February. And just look at how things are. Today, if you have to do it, of course, because of the lockdown, there are no travels happening. If there is an advisory, I think it's going to look very, very different. And medium impact, we had classified a few other countries, and low impact, again, hold your breath, it was US and Europe, which is right now the other way around, because right now the high impact countries would be US and Europe, and your China, Taiwan, and South Korea, they've actually recovered. So the virus took a trajectory that none of us anticipated. Some of the basic things what we did was a mandatory self-quarantine for about 14 days. We had asked our employees to work from home gradually, and only on a need basis did we ask them to come to office. And we were gradually reducing our strength at our development centers. All this was happening in the month of February. We had established help desks. We had an app. We had daily connect meetings. Some of us went and represented the IT industry in some governmental meetings. We met the collector, the superintendent of police, etc. And in the midst of all, and we were actually having our BCP plans. And mind you, the BCP plans were plans on paper, which were, and we even had a pandemic plan, by the way. But all this was on paper. But when the actual event started unfolding, then only we realized that we were completely unprepared. Now, when I say we had plans, we had backup locations. We saw the Chennai floods in 2015. There was some other development center which was able to support. If there's going to be a cyclone, let's say in a different place, then you have two other backup centers. But the pandemic was so virulent in its nature that it literally affected all the cities or all the development centers at one go, right? So all your BCP plans somewhere didn't factor in this particular aspect. So once the lockdown was declared, obviously the first preference was employee safety, and next came client commitments, because some of our clients were in the finance sector, were in the healthcare sector, where our services were absolutely mandatory to ensure that their respective businesses were running seamlessly. So in the midst of all this, we also faced a lot of people issues, like your PGs getting shut down, lack of food availability, and stuff like that. So we had to kind of look at it from that aspect as well. And a lot of teams came together, the facilities team, the communication team, the security team. The first thing what we did, we said we will have to honor our client commitments without compromising on safety at any cost. So we kind of sat together and we brainstormed, and we decided that to give you again a perspective, out of 2.5 lakh people, close to about 1,50,000 have laptops. The remaining 80, 90,000, they don't have laptops. They typically have your desktops. The challenge was, how do we move desktops from office locations to homes? A huge logistical challenge and a logistical nightmare, in fact. And on top of it, there were so many client restrictions as well. Some of your financial clients, they weren't very keen to kind of allow employees to work from home. But then we went back and convinced them, saying that we just don't have an alternative. This has to happen. If your business has to run, then this has to happen. And thankfully, this happened across all the major IT services providers. So I think the clients gave in, and we started it. We moved a lot of desktops, your dongles, UPS systems, your Wi-Fi adapters, and then we kind of asked our employees to configure their personal devices into an Infosys enabled system. Thankfully, Microsoft Virtual Desktop came into use. Then we had everybody download some of your communication systems like WebEx, your Microsoft Teams, Jabber, etc., so that things were seamless from a connectivity standpoint. And in the midst of all this, a lot of remote engagement was going on. As Prashant rightly pointed out, this was the time when we had to take care of our employees. When I say take care of our employees, one was the physical safety, but then there was another aspect called as your emotional well-being, because most of us, being social animals, would obviously love to kind of be in a workplace, go out for your coffee breaks, sit and work together, and enjoy your meetings, even conflicts. But this was a time when most of them, I mean, most of us, if not everybody, we are kind of living in an isolated world all by ourselves. So we were a little worried on the emotional well-being part. So a lot of remote engagement is going on, starting from your fitness, your uh, your uh, your mental health sessions, learning as well. How do you typically work in a virtual team? How do you be productive in a virtual team? Because some of our billing happens from a time and materials perspective as well. So you are answerable to the client in terms of giving your deliverables. At the same time, focusing on engagement initiatives like your online chess, focusing on some online quiz competitions, storytelling workshops for the children of parents, etc. These were some of the things that unfolded over the last 45 days. Thankfully, I'm very proud to say that we're standing at about 92% of our employees are enabled. They are contributing to client commitments. Uh, Obviously, there's been a lot of ramp down taking place across different sectors. To give you an equivalent of a ramp down in IT parlance is, for a particular client, let's say 1,000 people are working, the 1,000 slowly comes to, it dips to about 750, 600, and so on and so forth. So this particular ramp down is happening, which is quite telling, which will have a larger impact, which will kind of pan out in the next 2 or 3 quarters. We're again making a lot of plans to ensure that once the lockdown is lifted, how do you gradually ease our employees back into action? But one thing is sure, I think the business model has been completely disrupted. I mean, this was a forced disruption, if I may say so. And the world, as we see it in the next 6 months to 1 year, even after the epidemic has gone, is going to be a different place altogether. And as Mr. Venkat rightly pointed out, I think we need to have a very, very clear relook at some of our systems and processes. From a CSR standpoint, the Infosys Foundation has given about 100 crores to the PM CARES fund. At a state government level, we've contributed about 2.5 crores to the General Hospital Chengalpat for some personal protective equipment. And we've also been helping the police and some of the sanitation workers in North Madras. This is pretty much how we've been dealing with it. Honestly, we're taking it as it comes each day, each week, because we have our DC spread across almost 12 locations, primarily in the south. So what's working in Pune may not work in Chennai, and what's working in Trivandrum may not work in Hyderabad. So we are taking a very, very city-based approach. The intent is to ensure that our employees come first without compromising on their safety. And God forbid, even if one person kind of tests positive, then you have to quarantine the entire setup. So we're taking it in a very, very cautious manner. So far, we've had 2 of our employees who tested positive at a different location, and thankfully both of them recovered. There was one good news from an India perspective. From a global perspective, yes, the suspects are there, and there are some confirmed cases, and there have been instances where some of our family members have been affected. So work is going on in full swing. In parallel, we've initiated some welfare measures like a 21-day leave if anybody is going to be testing positive, with an option of extending the leave till such time the person recovers. We've also put in place a mechanism to ensure that there is adequate leave given for an employee in case a family member tests positive. And what happens if somebody is going to be in forced quarantine? Again, leaves are going to be granted. So these are some measures what we've been taking. Obviously, we're taking a hard look at some of our employees in bench about how do we kind of engage with them and how do we make them productive. In conclusion, I think the entire Indian IT industry's landscape is going to change once the pandemic is behind us. Hopefully for the good, but there is going to be a lot of short-term pain. And as Mr. Prashant pointed out, I think over the next at least 12 to 18 months, it's going to be very, very difficult for the entire economy to kind of come back to its feet. But knowing our sense of resilience, what Indians are in a way blessed with, I think we should be able to come back, but there's going to be a lot of pain involved. In conclusion, I think as the ex-British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher rightly put it, you may have to fight a battle more than once to win it. I think it's going to be true in our case. Professor Sridhar, over to you. Thank you once again.
Thanks a lot. It was Dinesh lucid and giving an overall perspective of IT and how you are prepared and how you have gone. But I have a question to ask you, might be later after this discussion we can ask on the security aspects, the data storage.
Oh, absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
And
so we
BFS, when you're dealing with BFSI and health care community, a lot of things are to be there. So maybe we'll have a question during the Q&A, we'll touch upon this, where ethics of each individual plays a vital role, and that too when you're dealing with remote place and data in a big way.
Absolutely.
So
Information security is of paramount importance. I will touch upon that during the Q&A.
Sure. Thanks a lot. And now moving on from IT, let us hear a perspective from how there was a saying in the WhatsApp or somewhere I saw, now your superheroes are not supporting, but the distributor salesmen or FMCG guys or Swiggy guys or the street workers, the nurses are the superheroes who are supporting us for all of us to live happily in the room and work. And now we have a veteran from HR, Mr. Subramanian, who is dealing with staffing for various types of organizations, and the other co-organization is involved in the FMCG industry in a big way, and which is a backbone for us to get our groceries, food, the vegetables on time. So I request, so let us see how the industry is working there and what are the steps taken by the Staffing Federation. I request Prashant, and Prashant runs he's a co-founder and ED of the organization called HR 3.0. Prashant, over to you. Sorry, Subramani, over to you. Sorry, Subramani. Sorry, buddy.
No problem, Professor. Great. Thanks connecting to all of you. And I think we had wonderful discussion so far. Great to hear from Venkat as usual. Amazing surveys if you have done results, and we need to intend to get it directly from you, maybe later after the call. And thanks from the Infosys perspective, very interesting to know what's happening. It was very lucidly put across. Now, coming to the staffing industry, I thought I'll just give you a little bit perspective around the staffing industry. Staffing, as you all know, is about an outsourced manpower. And I'm part of what you call the Indian Staffing Federation. We are a member of that federation. So broadly, first we start by giving you a context that the entire staffing, which is outsourced manpower, is broadly of 4 categories today, as you see. One is what you call the cost plus model. Like a service fee, which would be a small percentage, average, a fixed quantum. That's PAS, first one. Second is what you call the piece rate. The piece rate is essentially where you say, if you do this work per quantity, I'll give you 5 rupees, 10 rupees. A typical in context of a construction company or in terms of an automotive industry, where you work on a piece rate basis. That's a second kind of a manpower, and where third-party manpower resources get deployed. Third is what you call the SLA based, which is a service level agreement, which you agree upon with a client. So in all these cases, the principal employer or the client is a brand. It could be an OEM. It could be something else, a manufacturing company per se. And the last is what you call the rate card approach. Rate card, which typically is getting employed in the IT sector, where you agree on a certain rate card for a skill set and say this is the quantum which we give you for this rate card. And that has a lot of buffering built into it, because there essentially you get into dollar terms. So the rate cards. So if you see the staffing or outsourced manpower are deployed in these 4 categories of industry. And that's where the entire thing gets very dynamic today. And if you see the people are hearing about this mass migration, interstate migrants moving out, the biggest impact on the manpower or third-party manpower has happened in the piece rate and the SLA rates. Unlike most of other industry, in piece rate, people are daily based or a weekly based payment happens to them. And what happened, most of the work stopped by first week of March. And before the government could come out, with obviously government was facing the other challenge between first time I perhaps in a noted history where you're having a challenge where both life and livelihood is getting in a question mark. Never in the history of noted mankind, even the Spanish flu, livelihood was not a question because it was a World War time and there was enough production happening. First time in the noted history where a mankind, we are struggling between both lives and livelihood. So I think all countries were grappling. Countries like US would say, okay, we will give a little more higher weightage to livelihood at this stage because we have a phenomenal infrastructure to take care of lives, and we all see the results, what's happened. Most of the developed countries took an approach of giving precedence to livelihood at that stage, unknowingly what could be the impact on lives. Having said, if I look at the staffing industry or the outsourced manpower industry, the biggest impact has happened in the piece rate and SLA. Because there, employees working for third party are either on a daily wage basis or to execute those strategies, people start. And that's where we see a lot of chaos which is happening. And most of the third party companies.
Mani, we missed you a little bit. I missed it. I don't know whether others, but there was a network connectivity.
Oh, okay.
We have
now it's fine.
Connectivity at your end, sir.
Is it okay now? Are you able to hear me?
It is audible, but I could able to see an error stating the bandwidth is low.
Oh, okay. I have. It's okay. It shows all the 5 bars in place. Maybe.
Now you're clear.
Okay. Fine. I was trying to repeat is that if you take the outsourced manpower, there, as I said, the piece rate industry, which is basically constructions, EPC, where typically migrants are, interstate migrants work, has been impacted the most because work stopped by first week of March and led to a lot of mass migration before, as a country, we could execute our strategy, stay home, stay within the Lakshman Rekha. So that is where the largest impact, even today as a third party workforce, the biggest danger is all about livelihood because almost all the companies obviously will have a The strategy one is to protect their own employees, be it both in terms of lives and livelihood. The third party employee, who is essentially comes through people like us, partners are like us, are greatly dependent on our clients, our brands, our OEMs, to make sure the engine is running for our employees, where we become immediate employers. And so piece rate, SLA, while I see a lot of companies now coming specific to our industry, where you're talking about what we talk distributor sales representatives, logistics people, what's happening is, and I'll give you real-time examples what we have faced. We work with one of the largest retailers in this one of the global largest retailers. We are working as a manpower partner. While people are wanting to go, and I'm talking about a pan-India scenario, not about a particular state. I'm talking, we're working on 8 states. There are lots of shopping. These are all delivery boys, merchandisers, receivers, very vital roles in a retail environment. You have a lot of issues in terms of curfew passes not being given. Police, there's no standardized police framework. Somewhere the police has been liberal, somewhere police are extremely tough. Somewhere they're saying curfew passes are mandatory. Somewhere saying, somewhere they're saying that, okay, you can get a letter from your employer, we'll take it. So there's no standardization. And somewhere it's been very tough on these people. They want to go to work. And what I've realized during this entire thing, it's not that they don't want to stay at home and are okay to getting a subsidized income or food. They want to work. Many of these youngsters, they are the Gen Z. Unfortunately, when you talk about Gen Z, we only talk about IT or the white collar. These are also Gen Z employees, and they want to work. They can never work from home because the nature of job is not like that. And none of them are interested in just taking people. I have had personal calls with them. They want to work, but so we can't step out. They are not allowed to step out. I know, obviously, government has to decide between lives and livelihood. The problem is, this entire thing is leading to what you call the supply chain problem. This supply chain problem is obviously in hitting each of the points from a distributor to retailer, from distributor to brand, from brand to the raw material. Everywhere there's a dependency on manpower. And in this entire supply chain, 80% of the manpower is your interstate migrant, a loader unloader. If you take a CNFA or interstate migrant, or the delivery guy who goes from a distributor point to retailer is the last guy who may be mostly a local son of the soil, or in lack of a better word, who must be a local. But rest of the people typically come from a migrant labor domain. All of them have been impacted. And whatever data point which we are getting, we aren't sure when is the supply chains, the manpower supply chain is going to be addressed. It's very difficult to forecast anything because we cannot predict. But that's the big challenge, I think, which we are going to face. This entire supply chain distribution happening at a factory, happening at a distributor level, happening at a retail level, has to be taken care. What I understand as we speak is that government is coming with a massive plan, which is about around what I've heard from here and say around 2 million retail outlets across India. They're going to map and make it a selling point. It's a massive program which is being undertaken by Industries Ministry, Government of India, from a retail perspective. So the supply chain gap is getting unleashed. And that program, whatever I have heard skeletal of that program, executed. I think we'll be one of the first countries who are able to bring back the supply chain on track in the shortest period of time. That'll be real history if you're able to achieve whatever the skeletal plan I have been hearing or what I've been seeing. So that's going to be a big challenge. The entire supply chain piece, the supply chain which is dependent on labor, dependent on typically youngsters, dependent on guys who are unskilled, semi-skilled category. I think they're coming back into workforce is pretty vital. Every other sector, to me, is going to depend on them because they are the ones who will bring in both livelihoods and lives back into our homes. So I'll pause here, and probably when we have any question answers around the third-party workforce or anything around that piece, I'll pick it up at that stage. Professor Sree, back to you.
Thanks. Subramani, it was a good perspective in terms of lives and livelihoods. It's very, I think that itself is a big debate and a point of discussion where you have to look in and share your perspectives on both the aspects, which you are going to focus and which is going to be the priority for each individual or each corporate as well. And coming back to, interesting to know that government is taking so much efforts to ensure that last mile reach is happening. Very
I think
positive to know.
I must share, Professor Sridhar here, whatever we have been seeing as third-party partners to large FMCG giants, a lot of work is happening on the ground. Trust me, the kind of game plan I have been purview to one of the presentation, a lot of initiatives. And if we are able to bounce back with the supply chain question very fast, I think we will be one of the first countries to really crack it.
So, something positive, and all these challenges are giving us
very, very positive, very, very positive, whatever I have seen.
Very positive way outs and different ways to work. Maybe that is the thing which will be coming out post the discussion, and everyone will have its own ideas. And now, thanks again, Subramani, for joining us. And let us move to Shyam, who is from staffing, again going back to manufacturing sector. And Shyam has been in the forefront in a lot of organizations here in terms of NHRD, NAPM, MMA, or MCCI. And he's one of the persons to look upon for any backup support whenever we need. And well entrenched with academia as well. So an interesting perspective when we are discussing, he came out with the engagement tool, which he himself has done that survey. I would not, I want him to speak rather than me commenting on that. Over to you, Mr. Shyam.
No, thank you, Professor Sridhar. Thank you, Venkat, Mr. Prashant, Dinesh, and Mr. Mani. Nice to hear your perspectives. Like Sridhar said, I thought I should engage my employees during this lockdown period. So something came to my mind that why should I not conduct a survey? I don't know whether I've done it rightly or not, but then some amount of data points which we were able to get, and how we are going to proceed, other things, it needs some more time to discuss and move forward. How did the thought came to me? Definitely during this lockdown and or any prohibitory orders, it seriously affects the mental health of employees. And especially this current lockdown period has brought in a lot of fear of corona infection, loss of employment, or financial insecurity in the minds of people. But however, people are keeping quiet and trying to stay at home for good health, and so that they don't spread to others or take from others. So while this financial insecurity is where the employees are going through, at the same time, if you really look at it, the employers are more worried that like organization like where I work, we have lost revenue from almost from 20th of March. There's no sales after that, and I don't see at least till tomorrow. And even if they lift it on 15th, I don't know. I saw one message from Venkat that lockdown is extended up to 30th. If that is going to be the say that if not much, or even it is going to be very, very minimal. So under such situation, it is going to have a long-term ramification to the economy. The organization need to pay for their work employees' salaries and wages. So that's going to be a big strain to the organization. And so in such a situation, it is not only affecting the impact of economy, the organization, it is also affects the state of mind of employees. So at this only, keeping this in the mind, I thought I should try to put some questions to my employees, and I thought it could be a sort of a engagement also. So I started with 15 questions, And I'd like to share with you some of the questions and the results of it. So the questions were more on terms of how are you feeling at the moment? How is your mood in the last 10-15 days? Which is what interest you or little interest you? How is the sleeping habits after the lockdown? Are you annoyed or irritated with the family members during this lockdown period? How are you finding to sit at home during the lockdown period? So these were some of the questions which we asked, and around 400 participants, we used Microsoft Forms to get the data. We put the questionnaire and we got about 400 responses, which is around 20% of my population of my supervisory and managerial staff. I would say the data was around 45% of the respondents were below 35 years, and 40% of them were engineers, junior engineers, senior engineer level. They are not the managerial level. So, of course, we had some remaining 60% from the middle managers and the higher management, but predominantly good amount of response from the lower sector. So when the question of how do you currently feel, around 66% of them felt that they have a mixed feeling. 15% of them, they said they are sad, feeling sad and depressed, and remaining said they are cool. And another question, in the last 1 month, how are you feeling? 42% of them felt relaxed. 35% of them felt stressed and agitated. The remaining felt happy and relaxed. So, of a question of what happens, or when you get little interest or pressure of doing, 32% of them felt almost every day they felt that they have little interest and they didn't have the pressure of doing things. 32% of them said that in most of the days they felt like that, and 20 felt that they were interested doing things, many things, and remaining 16 felt that we disinterested on few days. Another question on sleeping habits. 63% felt that they sleep as usual. 19% of the respondents felt that they had disturbed and could not sleep well, and around 18% overslept and slept during the day also. This is one interesting point. How did you, and for another question is, how did you remain at home? What was the restlessness? 15% felt the restlessness to be at home almost all days, and 28% felt the restlessness on several days, and 33% felt restlessness on only few days, and about 23 people felt that they were comfortable staying at home. And to another question, what bothers them? 38% felt health issue of aftermath of the COVID is worrying them, and about 31% felt that future financial strain is bothers them, and about 22% worried about the future growth because the economy is going to go into bad shape, and the organization going to take time to bring back to the normal. So about 22% felt that their future growth will be affected, and about 6% worried that the organization they could not organize functions and events at home, and about 5% express about their jobs insecurity. So this is how, and we also asked few questions on in terms of how are they engaging themselves during this time. But 33% felt that work from home itself is occupying most of the time. 32% felt that spending the time with the family. About 17% of them felt that has helped them to streamline or regularize their habits like walking or jogging, etc. Around 12% of the respondents felt that spend time by reading books, listening to music, watching movies, and 7% of them express that they are not started learning new things like gardening, learning music, writing blogs, and drawing. And to another question, when do you think things will become normal? 23% were too optimistic. They said that within a month. About 58% were optimistic and realistic with next 2 to 3 months time. Around 28% expressed that it may take more than 6 months to 1 year. And like Venkat said, work from home for a manufacturing company is something very new. All these days we were talking about that it may not be possible, it will be very difficult and all these things. But this current time has pushed us and made people to work, and almost about 40 to 50% of the population who are in the corporate functions are working from home. And to understand their thing, we identified about 11 characteristics of work from home, and we also asked some questions on that. The amount of expectation in terms of face-to-face contact which they were used, how are they feeling now, and the autonomy of work and operation, the ability to control the schedule workflow, the amount of supervision and guidance they require, the importance of co-employees' input to for their work, the discipline regarding work, the level of job knowledge, the desire and need to be people around them, and the quality of work. These are some of the points that we asked them, and we asked them to rate in terms of their high, low, medium. So this is how we have done an exercise, and we are trying to go much more deeper into it and understand and try to bring in some action points for the future. This was more of a dipstick understanding of people at this particular point of time. Apart from this, we have also created a lot of online learning for them. We have converted our training programs into webinars, web-based ones. So that's going on. And another important aspect that we did was for the senior management team, we have created WhatsApp group, and we are trying to share with them exclusively made audio inputs them in terms of leadership insights, management insights, behavioral and managerial derailers which could pull their growth. So we are not only just sharing that audios with them, every alternative we are sharing with them. Not just sharing that, we are also asking them the next day, we are asking them some reflective questions and making people to participate and come out with their inputs, and which is shared in the WhatsApp group. I would say around 20% of the population are participating very actively, and this is what we expected when we created it, and probably as the days goes, we may have to motivate people to more participate. So this is what we have done, and over to Professor Sridhar, and I would like to take some questions as we go.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Shyam, for coming out with this survey, which is interesting and making to think a lot of things. On the lighter side, somebody having a good sleep and extra sleep. Nice to know that somebody is sleeping for more than the regular time. And one of the things to be on a positive note, or just to say, when all of us are speaking about challenges, there is one startup which has come out with a contest which I would like to slide share and see where they are engaging. Maybe for few of my friends, I've been posting this. This is gonna. I'm sharing a screenshot where one of the organizations is it visible?
No.
Not yet, Professor.
Oh.
Yeah.
Just a second.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Now it's okay. So might be for few of my friends who are in the here in the call, they would have seen these WhatsApp messages. But otherwise, I thought this can be a good way to engage the people in their house. Like the contest is being created for seniors, sub-juniors, and young children. And every day the task is being given uh, by the person who is running this organization. And every day the tasks vary. Might be, and they're grouping it in a WhatsApp group, and then prizes are being announced. In fact, one of the they have teamed up with a Rotary organization and then NGO called VXL, where they were one of the prize winners from the chamber. So these are the ways of engaging people as well, which can be, I'm sure a lot of organizations are doing it, but if not, if to third party also, this can be done. This is just a suggestion which I'm showing. Like somebody is asked to draw sea animals, speak about their spouse, and what support the spouse is getting from men to men or men to men. Like that, a lot of things are happening. Just I wanted to share during this moment. And coming back to our session, maybe one of the things which I wanted to check upon is like cash flow, which is a concern for everyone. And this is just a thought. Should we bring in a frugal living in terms of employee mindset, or well, it's a very sensitive thing to speak on. But when cash flows is a constraint for any employer and as well as employee, should we bring in a concept of frugal living, or should we go on a campaign? It is just a very odd question, but I thought since it's a brainstorming session also, I thought I'll post it to all the HR community here. Any views on this from any leadership team here? Should we go on a campaign of frugal living? This is a question to panelists or any members.
I'll take the first go here, Professor Sree.
Yeah.
So we obviously are debating this piece. So one of the HR friends and happens to be a senior lead in another company said
a little bit louder.
I'm saying one of my friends who happens to be a HR leader as well. Can you hear me? Am I clear now?
Yeah, now it's clear. Now it's clear.
So he was saying the avenues for anyway have gone down. So when you say discretionary spends, you're talking about vacations, you're talking about malling, you're talking about movies. So the logic they are saying, by default, you would have spent around 25% of your money on discretionary spends. So why not reduce 25% from a CTC perspective and put it back into companies? So there are companies, people coming with different logics. Obviously, you're working from home, so in some sense, if you keep hearing, the larger story is enterprise survival is more important and employee survival will follow. If enterprise don't survive, employees have no options. So I think that takes precedence. And if every cash which you stop spending is a saving, which helps for enterprise to come in. I'm sure Dinesh comes from a very large organization when people who count 2 lakhs and above. I'm sure everyone is thinking of some way for enterprise to come out fast and come out resilient. And small sacrifices from an employee's perspective between jobs and salaries. I think there's no question. Salaries can take a cut here. Jobs are more important to be retained and saved.
Yeah, well, very well said, Mani. Resonates with me. It's very well said.
Yeah.
But
Prashant,
one thing,
sorry.
yeah, Prashant, I was about to come to you only because it goes back to when we are cutting down or spending, the last mile person may not have money to spend. So Prashant, it's a situation which is very tough, but I'm waiting for a reply from you.
So my thought here that, when we're taking pay cuts and we have to take pay cuts because companies don't have cash flows. And
little bit louder.
When we're taking, am I audible now?
Yes.
So when we're taking pay cuts, which are not an option because companies don't have compensation, but and if it is a trade-off between jobs and pay cuts are most welcome. However, the way one has to look at is what is the base level of money required for survival. and divided by the CTC. So for example, for the front line, it could be, 90%, right? And for top management, it could be 50% based on their basket of consumption, of course. And therefore, perhaps the pay cut has to follow that sequence that at the top. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
At the top, the pay cut may be 50%, and at the front line, the pay cut may be 10%. And the other thing in terms of what people should spend on, or the frugality with which they should live, I guess there's already reasonable dissonance between Gen X and Gen Z that we're seeing. Frugality is a concept very close to the hearts of Gen X, like me. But that may not be true of Gen Z. So while we may look at reducing the available cash flows, and after that, it might be better to let people decide whether they want to be frugal and save money, or they just want to, spend it all. To avoid further between the typically the junior management.
Hey, last point, we couldn't hear you. It was not clear.
So I'm saying that since there's already some amount of tension between the Gen Z and the Gen X, and Gen Z will typically be junior management born in 1995, and Gen X will typically be senior or top management. Now, to avoid this confrontation further, it may be a good idea to let people decide whether they want to be frugal or they want to splurge, because Gen X usually tries to be frugal. Gen Y actually splurges more than Gen Z, and this is majority. There will be minority who will behave differently, but Gen Z also likes to enjoy life and stuff like that, and hence your point that should we advocate frugality? I guess we should avoid that to reduce the dissonance and live with reduced cash flows within which people can decide how much to save.
Yeah, thanks a lot. There is an interesting statement from Anand Gopalan, who is the co-chair. Frugal could mean cutting down on luxury. In that manner, the people at the bottom of pyramid would not be affected. It's a point to ponder again. How much luxury and how much what is the basics gets determined by each one of the individuals. Yeah. And now one of the interesting questions which I'm waiting to ask is from our friend Dinesh from Infosys on the security aspect, which is a critical for a customer point of view, and as well as because how are you handling it, Dinesh?
Sir, as you rightly pointed out, information security is literally the make or break of the IT industry, because God forbid if there's going to be one breach of data, be it from your financial client or be it from any client for that matter, the repercussions are going to be really, really, really huge. Thankfully, we've put in place a lot of mechanisms to try and see how we can avoid it. There are 3-4 ways in which an employee can connect to the network. One is through the Infosys network. Let's assume that it is through a laptop. One can connect from a home shipped desktop, where I spoke about how some of our desktops are getting shipped to home locations. Another one is from an Infosys desktop or a laptop to the client network using their VPN, their virtual private network. And then somebody can connect from a personal device to the Infosys network. And the last option is from a personal device to a client network. These are some of the permutations and combinations available. Obviously, there can't be a one-size-fits-all approach. We had to take a segmented approach where we put in place stringent controls where personal devices are involved. And we've also requested some of our employees to do an hard imaging in case they have to get connected to the network. literally meaning for the next 30 days, if there's going to be a lockdown, you cannot use your personal device for any other means other than connecting to the network. And some of them have agreed for the sacrifice.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Dinesh. And there is one question from our participant, Karan. Is it good to look for flexi working options based on roles and responsibilities? I think this question is for post-lockdown. Any panelists would like to address this?
Maybe I can just give a perspective, sir, and then I'll ask the others also to share their views. This is going to be the norm of the day. All of us have been somewhere talking about the gig economy for a long time. Gig economy started from the US. It went into APAC. It embraced Singapore, or rather Singapore embraced gig economy. China to an extent embraced it. India somewhere was still doing it in spurts. But I think with COVID, there is going to be a certain disruption, at least in certain industries like the information technology industry, the product space, maybe a bit of retail as well. I think the gig economy is going to kick in before we even know it.
Any other panelists would like to answer this question, or can I move to? There are a lot of questions coming in.
I can just answer this.
Yeah.
In our industry, which is third party, we have people deployed in merchandisers, promoters, and there's a lot of requirement for distributor, sales representative, loaders, unloaders. So in that scenario, we are making people, instead of losing jobs, shifting them into the job, which is about a distributor or the supply chain guy. And I think that's a classical example. People are taking up those jobs as well. And some require a bit of a training, and people are doing very fast. So that's happening real time on the ground. Especially people in bottom of the pyramid are most agile towards it. And I have seen as the most agile. Vis-a-vis, I have seen people little above the hierarchy having their own questions. I have been doing this. Part of the pyramid, they're quick to catch up. Opportunities, grab it, new job if you're giving. I don't want to lose that opportunity. So that's my learning so far.
Thanks a lot. Being part of an academic fraternity, and there is one question from Nafisa Khan. As a member of teaching fraternity, I would like to ask the HRs what would be the impact on the employment opportunities of the students who are going to get graduated in a few months' time. Placements.
Okay, let me again try attempting this. We have 12,000 people getting trained. When I say getting trained, they go through a 5-month training program. We have another 7,000 offers extended, waiting for people to join. This is only on the engineering school part. On the B school part, we've extended about 600 odd offers. We should be able to onboard each one of them. We've also promised, in fact, I was in touch with Professor Sridhar as well. The commitment is Infosys will honor all its offers. The only thing is we're waiting for an opportune time. Once the lockdown gets lifted, within a couple of months, we should be able to onboard. This is a situation as on date. The ramp downs are happening, but I think it is happening to a manageable extent. Once things go beyond a certain threshold, I think there are going to be impacts, but we'll have to wait and watch. As of now, at least from an IT industry perspective, our revenues come typically from the US and Europe, which are hard hit, but I think they will recover. So there are going to be delays, but I think onboarding is going to happen across. The only 2 organizations that I've heard who have rescinded their offers are Indeed.com and Gallup. These are a couple of companies that I've heard who said that they're not going to extend the offers. Everybody else have indicated that they're going to kind of delay the joining. That's about it.
Okay. There is one interesting question I think I would like to ask for all the panelists is from Anuradha Nagarajan. How have you been able to keep up with the accountability levels for those who are working from home? Monitoring the people working from home. Can the participant itself ask the question to clarify more? Or?
Oh, sure, Professor. Hi, everybody. My basic question is, rather than us monitoring through any other technology means, how are we going to induce the basic accountability and ownership in employees that they ensure that the deliverables are being met, whether they're working from home or whether they are in a different scenario? So are companies doing anything towards keeping up their morale as well as the accountability part of it?
Any answers from panelists?
So, Anu, if you ask my experience, we haven't come across a challenge on that front. So, of course, I have very limited set of people working out of home. Much of the real work happens in the shop floor, but a lot of work preparatory to what's going to happen in the shop floor over the next few weeks or months is happening from home. And we really haven't come across a challenge of that type. And I think what I heard from Dinesh in Infosys is also, that they've taken elaborate steps to make sure that everyone is properly equipped to do that. So I think you got to trust them. While in office, you trust those people. You don't police everyone. So if you're going to kind of toggle between trusting and policing, I think you got to trust them more and while working from home than working from office.
So trust is the critical factor, which we can understand. To the secretary team, do we have time or we have to close by 5 o'clock, ma'am? Because a lot of questions are coming, or should we take up offline? Or we can send it.
I think it's up to 5:30, right? If I'm right.
No,
5
actually,
o'clock.
no, it's actually 3:30 to 5, Professor Sridhar, but I blocked it till 5:30. Probably you can go for another 10 minutes.
Yeah, there are a lot of interesting questions coming in. Maybe.
Yeah. You can go around for another 15 minutes, probably. No issues.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Prashant ji, you were supposed to answer something. Sorry for interruption.
That's fine. My point was similar, that the basic level of trust has to exist. If we don't trust our people and our people don't play back the trust, then we have a challenge. Then they are not passionate, they're not engaged, and we need to do something to engage them, to make them passionate. Having said that, I was talking to a professor of Harvard Business School a few years back, and he said, who says micromanagement is bad? It has been made to look like bad, but there's nothing bad about micromanagement. Now, I would think that micromanagement on one side and absolute no checkpoints on the other side are two extremes, and both can be avoided. It makes huge sense to have checkpoints, which is not mistrusting and distrusting people, but it's about supporting them, right? There will be people who have huge amount of self-discipline and who can do it themselves. The others, some of my colleagues have told me that, hey, Prashant, we definitely need some amount of supervision. We understand that you don't like supervising, but that's your job. You've got to supervise us. So some amount of checking also helps, because somebody might be stuck with something. He needed some support from some other colleague, some other function. You think that he's doing the job, but he's unable to do because of want of information, support, coordination, which he at his or she at his level may not be able to do, but you can perhaps support him. And hence checkpoints are extremely important. Now, depending on the job, the checkpoint could be a weekly checkpoint, daily checkpoint, or maybe twice in a day checkpoint, depending on how granular the job is. So that was my thought, which doesn't replace trust. Without trust, forget work from home, work from office will also not work. How many people and how many times can you supervise? And also, somebody's asked me a question I heard from one of our esteemed speakers, etc., that WFH participants, female gender is not on par with that of male gender. Is it the societal factors or is it the gender bias also? Ma'am, this is, so somebody called Vidya has asked this question. So this is self-reported engagement. Nobody else is reporting engagement. So based on the questions that respondents have answered, we've used our algorithms to figure out who's engaged, who's not engaged. I strongly believe I haven't seen this kind of difference between the male and female engagement in my life. And therefore, there is a marginal difference. Women are at a country level a little less engaged, but there are organizations where they're more engaged. But this kind of difference I haven't seen. And this is certainly societal issues, because however broad-minded we might seem to be, however good noises we might be making, and you don't have to tell me, but the women around this webinar, no, is everyone sharing work equally, or you have a larger share of work to do? Let me be frank, with all my right noises that I'm making even now, a bulk of the grunt work is being done by my wife. I mean, I try to collaborate with her and all of that, but she's doing the bulk of the grunt work in the absence of all the servants and everything else, and all of us working from home, because I'm sitting here doing webinar while she must be making tea, right? So that is certainly creating significant pressure on women, unless this data is biased, which could be, which means that the women who are not unhappy haven't responded, and only the women who are unhappy have responded, and men who are unhappy have not responded, only happy men have responded. Quite possible, I'm not negating it, but little difficult, right? Little difficult. And therefore, I think it is a big societal challenge still. I was looking at some surveys from US. They have similar findings. I was talking to a professor who works on work from home in the US, and she had similar findings. So it's not just true of India, it's true of US also, right? The only countries where it may not be true are countries like Sweden, Denmark, where you don't see this kind of data.
Subbu, you were supposed to say something?
I know, I'm just saying I see the two questions which have come out. One is implication for labor side in event of salary cuts, and
Yes.
when legal implications of salary, cutting salary. So I think I'll just take the second one first. As far as the legal implications are concerned, you cannot alter the employment of anybody, be it basically when it comes to salary, unless this has been acknowledged and accepted by the employee concerned, irrespective of the levels, which is. So I think you cannot unilaterally do it. You have to get his acknowledgement and acceptance. Now coming to the the other one, which was regarding the impact on labor. So most of the companies which have taken a stand, very simple. Labor, if you see, has two rates. One is the minimum wage, other is the market wage. So if you take it, I'll just give you context of not the manufacturing, because manufacturing typically works on the minimum wages. But if you take the sales side of the business, which is your distributor, sales representative, merchandisers, promoters, typically they work on a market wage, which is 25% or 22-25% above, and they have something called market working allowance, which is a TADA. So most of the companies are taking you, a guy is mapped to a semi-skilled rate, semi-skilled salary levels are X, we'll protect that. Anything above that is considered a market wage, and that amount has been cut. Now coming to the payment, which is under third question, obviously payment has to be done as per the wage code of Payment of Wages Act before 7th or before 10th, depending on the size and scale of your industry. I think there's going to be no compromise on that. Government is very clear. Government has, as they have been saying, government has come with advisory and directives, but there are a lot of debates happening whether the DMA, Disaster Management Act, under which most of the directives have come, how legally binding it is over and above the labor law, which is a labor. So there is debate, but given the fact that courts and government will take a very pro-labor approach during this period. So as an employer, it is better to be on the better side of government directive and advisories rather than challenging it on the legal context. Something I thought I should. Your partners are the best place because we are partners to large FMCG brands. They are asking us to share the weight sheet and the bank statements, the bank that we have transferred the money. That's a proof they are seeking before they are releasing our payment. So if you're a principal employer, seek the actual detail, the pay sheet and the bank payout. And they have asked us all the proof to share you have paid. Company employees, you don't have to worry about it because, and every payment has moved. There's already a directive from government. If you're not following, then it's a concern that it should be transfer of money. If you're still living on the cash component, paying salary through cash or a check, I think that's a great opportunity to change your system, move into money transfer framework. You won't get a better opportunity to do that. Bank transfer should be the only mode and seek proofs. So that's what I thought I'll just quickly share that.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mani. Anand, our co-chair, is there. Might be there are a lot of questions coming on the regulatory aspects. Anand, can you pitch in for a few minutes on overall perspective?
Given, I think we are doing a separate program on the salary layoff and things. So if there is anything specific in line with the topic of discussion today, I will be glad to answer. Okay. Otherwise, I would say that we will take it up on a later date where we need PF and everything, wages and all to be done.
Yeah, oh, that's as legal a response could be. Wonderful.
I think there is a question from
best. Pardon?
Venkat has still got time, has not fully unleashed his potential to the crowd.
Yes.
His talk time has been very limited today.
So, no, I'll go with Anand, then I'll look for another day.
Okay, there's some questions about legal responding concerning employee health and safety. I think there's no question. ESI has come out with enough directives that ESI hospitals are getting created. COVID-19 is covered under ESI. So any employee who's under ESI, there is no worry. There are directives which are come out. There are enough notification. I can share with the secretariat if they want those notifications, if they want to be shared. For the people under the insurance schemes, company have GMC, group medical coverages and GPAs. Many of the insurance players I deal with have covered COVID-19 under the scope. So COVID-19 is catered. There's a directive which has gone from labor thing and also from industry that cover COVID-19 as part of IRDA has come out with a advisory covered COVID-19 as a disease and coverage under GMC. So you don't have to worry about it. Government is taking care of all that.
Fine. One question from my side to all the panelists before closing down. What is that social distancing norms in a manufacturing place, or what is the way about going forward in the days to come? Any quick ones to say from our panelist side to all our people, participants?
Okay, I'll take this question first. See, we got to operate the shop floor with a reduced number. We are sort of figuring out what is it that we can do with 50%, 30% or 20% or whatever percentage of manpower that's allowed inside, following all the social, physical, spatial distancing norms. And the lines have been set in a particular way where it's optimized for productivity at a different level. But now that we got to reconfigure the workforce, what is the best that we can do? So there's no questions that we need to follow all the norms which have been laid down by the government, and I mean maybe improve it further and have our own standards. But I think only when the plants start functioning, we'll really know what is it that we cannot do, what is it that we can do, and how is it that we can accomplish the overall objectives following the norms of social distancing, etc. So, I mean, we were looking forward to opening following all of this thing the day after tomorrow, but nothing is clear from the CM's press statement, which is circulating now. I'm sure they'll come out with some guidelines soon. So I think we will wait for those guidelines and take it forward.
Professor, if I could just, Professor, you're on mute.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just one thing, for the ESA and PF aspect, Chamber is trying to organize a meeting with the PF and ESA officials. The details will be shared once same is made available. We are having a separate program on the layoff, wages to be paid, and various queries have come here. The details of that also should be circulated at the end of this week. We hope to have it sometime.
Sure. So thanks a lot, ma'am. I'll leave it to Secretary General Saraswati. Thanks a lot from my side, from each of the panelists, and taking their time and coming out. Hope the time is running out for us to close. We are at 5:20, another 10 minutes more. So, any final questions from participants, or I request Madam to take it over. Secretary.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot. A very big thanks to all the speakers, Sridhar, Anand, Gopalan and team, and all the participants. If I don't, the connection will automatically get connected. Let me wish you all a very safe stay. We understand the lockdown is extended in Tamil Nadu. Let us wait and watch what happens further. All the very best to all of you. Thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
All of you. Very nice.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.